Bulgaria was a great experience, and I'd like to sort of give 6 main stories from the 6 main experiences that happened while I was there in Bulgaria. The transition home experience was a really great one for me to have at the beginning of the trip, because it definitely brought to focus why we were there, which was fighting human trafficking. The transition home is a place for trafficked victims to go and live, to be able to restore themselves, to learn life skills, to living in the world, and to reintegrate into society in a safe way. And in order for that to happen, anonymity is important. So we were not allowed to actually come into contact with the girls that were living in the transition home. But we went over there, and our team bought a bunch of things that they made that they had for sale. And then a group of 10 of us went to clean. And it was really, really great to be able to be serving in a way that was tangible and just very real. And I, especially after the years that I've studied about human trafficking and the victims that are involved, it was just really, really great to be able to do that, to be able to serve, however small it might have been to them or to the rest of the world. It was really a great chance to serve. The second experience happened a couple days later. It was the Roma village, the gypsy village. This is where I learned that gypsy, the word gypsy in Europe is sort of not a politically correct word anymore. Roma is the more appropriate word, more politically correct word. So we went to this Roma village in Sofia, Bulgaria, and it was something that I was not expecting at all. And it was very interesting because I was a little jet lagged still when we were at the village, but I remember being bundled up in 5 or 6 layers. It was snowing. This is like the second day that we're there, and it's snowing. And I am bundled up and freezing. And these kids come running out to us, and they have 1, maybe 2 layers on of clothes, and it is freezing out. And I am just blown away at how happy they are. The other thing that I noticed too was that this Roma village was part of the Christian church for a while, and it was really amazing because what I heard from everyone, all sorts of different people about Romas, is that they're very, they do take things, their lifestyle is to survive, and so they're going to take whatever they can. And it was amazing to see as we passed out treats to the children and clothes to the adults, that no one was scavenging or trying to take things for themselves. They were very giving to each other, and it was just very amazing to watch how this village had been changed so dramatically just by being a part of the church. And we even saw that in a direct kind of way. Some of the kids from the other villages were trying to come over, and you could see that they would try and take things, and they would try and hoard things as they could. And so it was a bit tougher, but it was amazing to see that kind of change and to see that kind of happiness. And it reminded me that that it isn't things, it's not material possessions that makes someone happy, because these Romas people, the children and the adults, had next to nothing, and the joy that I saw, that I experienced with them, was just amazing, completely amazing. The third experience was Lome, and Lome was definitely a life-changing experience for me. Lome is a small city, about 20,000 people, right on the border between Romania and Bulgaria. And over half of the people there are Roma, and there is a unemployment rate of 97%. So the poverty in this area is extreme, and there's a large exodus of people that were leaving the city. So we went there, and the Christian group that we went to, we went on a Monday night, and they wanted us to do a service, and so they paid for coal to come to be brought to their place so that they could heat up the building for us, which was a big deal coming from that kind of thing. They also had host homes for us to stay the night in, and each host home gave all of us huge amounts of food. And this was especially touching on two levels. First, they were giving everything they had, and they had nothing to begin with. And then they were also part of a culture, that Roma culture, where normally they'd be taking, and seeing that change again after being part of a Christian circle was just astounding. After the first night, they asked us to stay a second night too. We couldn't stay the night though. We had to leave that night, Tuesday night, because we had to be in Sofia the next morning. And so both nights I worked with the kids. And the one experience that I had, the single biggest experience I had with the kids was that they were very much looking to be valued. And so we, both nights we were sharing messages about how they're important, how they're valued. We had stories, we had crafts, snacks, things like that. And then of course we shared our Christian message about how God loves them no matter what. And both nights a 12-year-old girl came named Esther. And the first night she came, she had her little 1-year-old brother. And we were working in a bedroom, or a room that was about smaller than a normal bedroom, about half the size of a normal bedroom, and 20 kids in it. So it was very small and packed, and 4 teachers, and it was a packed room. And so this little baby boy kept crying and crying, and so we kept encouraging her to bring the boy to her mother, but she couldn't get her mother to take the boy. And so the first night was a bit chaotic with that boy. And the whole time we saw Esther trying so hard to be listening to the messages that were offered, that listen to or help do the crafts and have fun, but I felt more and more she was being pulled away by her baby brother because he wouldn't stop crying, and she had that duty to take care of. The next night she came back, and the boy was there and crying, and so we were very persistent, and finally the mom came and said that they would be leaving in a cab. And I felt so bad because I thought, now she's going to have to miss any other messages we had to share, and she was so eager to learn about it. Fortunately, the mom left with the baby, and Esther stayed, so that was nice to see. Well, it came time where we were doing the craft, and I was in charge of the older kids while another person took care of the younger kids. And I went to sit down, and we had one translator in the room for both groups, so he ended up moving towards the younger kids section and working with them. And so I had these older kids who were kind of funny because they would start talking to me in Bulgarian like I understood, and so I gestured to them and things like that. And it was great. We were having a fun time, and I was gesturing to show them how the craft worked. So there were 2 girls sitting next to me that were new this particular night, 8 and 9 years old, and they weren't saying much, they weren't doing much, they were just sort of staring at me. And so I really wanted to get them into it, and so I needed to have an icebreaker, and so I was starting to build up a sweat, and I ended up gesturing to wipe my forehead, and then I wiped it off on the girl that was sitting right next to me. And her eyes widened, and she was just sort of wondering what happened. And I just sort of gave the gesture of, I don't know. And then I pretended to sneeze in my hand, and I did it to the girl next to her sister. And it was funny, and they started to laugh and get involved more. And soon with the older kids, it was all a big thing where we pretend to lick our hands and wipe it on someone else, and it was a lot of fun. Well, the end of the night came, and it was time for them to go. So they went back to their parents in the sanctuary, and we had to, as a team, we had to leave really quickly because we had to get back to Sofia so that we could be ready for our thing in the morning. And so we were trying to leave pretty quickly, and before we left, I spotted Esther, and I sort of waved to her, waved goodbye, and she came up and she licked her hand, and she went to do the game where she'd wipe it on me, but before she could even finish, before she could even do the wiping thing, she dove right in for just a big hug. And that very moment, it just came to me that all these children, every single one of them, wanted what Esther wanted. They wanted to be affirmed, they wanted to be loved, and they wanted to be valued. And I'll never forget them, I'll never forget those children. And I hope one day to be able to go back there, because that city, those children definitely captured my heart. And yeah, something I hope to go back to. The fourth experience was the awareness campaign in Sofia. And that one, I would say, it wasn't my low point, but it was definitely not my comfort level at all. In Sofia, we went to the middle of the city, and about 10 or 12 of us got chained up and walked through the whole city, or the main area. We walked for several hours. And then the rest of the group were walking around with flyers with the A21 campaign sharing facts about human trafficking. I am not a street ministry person. I was not comfortable with that because I don't want to be in the spotlight when it comes to being in a city or being with adults or anything like that. And but it really was an awakening call, because at first when we started going through the city, part of my trouble was also that we weren't supposed to smile. We're supposed to be very somber, and so we're doing that, and people are passing by, and some of them are smiling and wanting to know more, and you have to stay sort of serious. But then about halfway through, I started to get annoyed because every so often we'd have to cross the street up towards the front. They'd have to cross, so they'd cross fast, and me towards the back, I'd end up getting yanked along without being aware of what was going on. And it started to frustrate me because I felt like I was being just pulled around. But then all of a sudden, it just was this. It hit me like lightning that this was something I chose to do, and at any time I could leave. But there are children. I mean, there are adults too, but the average age of a trafficked victim is 12 years old, and they are being forced to lose their freedom, and they are being forced to be paraded around and treated like property. And man, that is just something that was hard to come to grips with, just knowing how humiliating it might have felt to be a free person choosing to do this for strangers, and then thinking if you didn't have that choice and you were forced to do that. And most traffic victims, 1% of them get rescued to begin with, and when they're rescued, they've been in it for several years. And just just having that or knowing that exists, it just was this sudden realization, which is all that happened while I was over there, were these sudden realizations that these things were happening and how real it became when I experienced that. So I wouldn't say it was my favorite part, but definitely it made me realize something, the real life truth of what human trafficking is. The fifth event was Thessaloniki, Greece, and for many of the team, that was definitely a highlight because we got to stay in a very, very, very nice hotel, and it was right across the Mediterranean, and it was just a very touristy place. For me, it was very difficult because Greece is what you would call a destination country. We're a transition country as far as human trafficking. What that means is usually the children or the people that are trafficked, that are collected, are taken to Greece, or taken to Greece to do what they're supposed to do, or to transition them into Western Europe. Bulgaria is a source country, which means there's not a lot of prostitution or anything like that going on there, but they are having their girls, having their children taken from that country, and then Greece is often a place where they go next. For me, Greece was really tough because I knew that 1 or 2 blocks away there were brothels that had many of those girls that I had interacted in their villages or their communities just days ago, and so it was very difficult for me to be there. In Greece, prostitution is legal, and they argue that it's legal to protect the prostitutes, but the problem is that the Johns, the people that go in for that kind of stuff, don't know the difference between a legal brothel and an illegal one. And it was really tough for me because I felt like in this modern society, in this society, this world, where I know so many good people who would not stand for that, that we are standing by and we have nothing. We are unable to do anything. This was also a very spiritual time for me because it helped me come to peace too, that these kinds of things, this kind of thing of being that superhero, knocking down the door and being a rescuer, while it is something that maybe one day I'm called to do, but right now I had to have a peace that came from somewhere way higher than me, and that he was going to take care of things, and that I didn't have to be the one to take care of everything.